Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. My brother, male 24. Let's call him Dan, and his girlfriend, female 21. Let's call her Sarah. Have been in an on-off long-distance relationship for about a year and a half. Ever since the beginning of their relationship, my brother's been acting rich and giving off big-shot heir to a rich fortune vibe, and showering Sarah with luxurious gifts like designer clothing, bags, cosmetics, or the newest iPad, etc. In fact, our family is indeed moderately wealthy. Not that kind of billionaire wealthy, but we could afford 4 or 5 vacations a year, to buy houses and send 4 kids to study abroad in Europe with ease. Growing up not worrying about money and having almost everything that we wish for, but we were always taught to be grateful and cherish every cent we were given. So wasting money on luxury items such as shown was never a thing in our family. Plus, my parents are extra strict on our allowance. But everything changed since my brother moved to Europe. Without my parents, he started to spend more and more. My parents gave him an allowance of 400 to 500 euro a month, which I think is reasonable since he lived in a boarding school, which provided food and room, plus laundry services. So technically, he didn't have to pay for any living expenses. He constantly called home and complained and whined about how 500 euro isn't enough for life in Europe, and all his friends have their own credit cards, and he needs more money to buy food. My mom, gullible and soft-hearted enough to believe him, and sent him more money every time he asked for it. But that's not enough. His greed grew bigger and bigger. That would lead him to his disgusting action later on. 4 years ago, my parents opened a bank account in Europe and put 500,000 euro in as investment money, with the intention of opening a store here. They also bought a house, which Dan and me later moved in after finishing school. Then, virus hit. My parents couldn't fly to Europe, and the money stayed unmovable. This is when Dan met Sarah. At this time, he was working and earning. Not much, but some money. Sarah is an internet hot girl, and as Dan said, he fell for her at first sight. They talked and found out that Sarah was struggling with family debt and college debt, etc. Dan then promised to help her out. He turned to my mom and asked for money, but my mom said no. She despises Sarah and said that she's an internet W that's only after him for his money. Dan threw a fit and stopped talking to mom. He then faked signatures, filled out the money transfer form, and transferred money from the investment account to his account, little by little. He started off with 500 to 1,000 euro at a time, then 5,000, then 10,000, then 20,000. He then destroyed the account balance and hacked into my parents' email to delete all the emails from the bank. His scheme only fell apart when I moved in with him and accidentally saw the account balance in the trash. It stated that there's only 250,000 left in the account, which meant he had taken 250,000 out of it. I freaked out and confronted him. He begged that I shouldn't tell my parents, and he will pay back the money he took. I said no. He earns like 1,500 a month. How is he going to pay them back, and where the duck is the money? He said 80% of the money he took went to Sarah to pay off her and her family's debt, her gifts, and monthly support. The rest is for himself. He got scammed in stock playing, blah blah blah. I said BS and called my parents only to find out that he was also borrowing money from my aunt, around 8,000 or 10,000, and used the same tactic to pay her back. My dad and I were outraged, but my mom only cried. She couldn't believe that her little boy would do such a thing and refused to believe. She then forgave him and spoiled him as though nothing ever happened. His actions caused big damage to our family, mentally and financially. Due to virus, their business hits an all-time low, and this 500,000 is sort of the lifesaver for us to maintain the family. My youngest brother's college fund may also depend on this money. My dad gave Dan an ultimatum. He demanded the money from him and Sarah back. They can break it down and pay slowly, but he wants it back, whole, not a cent less. He wanted Dan to explain to Sarah that none of the money he gave her was his, and they need to work and pay them back. Dan did just that, explained to her and stuff. And not to anyone's surprise, Sarah refused to give the money back. She said that she has no obligation to give them back ever since she never technically asked for it. Dan gave it to her because he loves her, and that's it. End of the story. She even demanded for our family to publicly apologize to her for defaming her and tainting her reputation. Sarah maybe received a lot of things, but she isn't wrong that OP's brother gave it to her. At the end, he is the one who stole the money, not her. I assume she didn't know where OP's brother is getting the money. As OP said, her brother was pretending to be rich and spoiling his girlfriend. So I think it's only OP's brother who is responsible for paying the money back, and not Sarah, despite whether OP and her family likes her or not. My dad got married to Eve last year. Eve has 2 kids. Her son is 4 now, and her daughter is 2. There's a lot of deep stuff in Eve's background and the kids, with their paternal side of the family. But they really had nobody other than Eve until my dad and Eve met. Once they got married, my dad adopted them. Then my dad's relatives didn't want the kids to be treated the same as the rest of the grandkids, and told Dad they would never mean as much to them as the rest of the Bio family would. So he told them to get lost and cut ties with them. When all 3 other sides, Dad's, Eve's, and the kids' paternal side, were basically not in the picture, Dad asked my mom's family, my mom died when I was 2, if they would embrace my step-siblings as family and treat them the way they would me, because they were now my siblings, and my family and I loved them, so it was important to me to see them being embraced by my family. My family actually asked me if what Dad said was true, and I told them it wasn't. I said I hardly even knew the kids, let alone loved them. My family told my dad they would never see my step-siblings as their grandkids. I should also maybe make it clear that my dad and maternal family did not remain close or like family after my mom died. I still saw my family, but Dad was never involved, and he would go to his own family when I was with mine. I never liked my dad's family, so it was never a huge deal to me not to see them, and it's not a huge deal not to have them around at all. They were always really annoying about how girly I am, and they could never believe I would want to have a manly job when I graduate. Eve was pretty depressed when she realized she hadn't made her kids' family all that much bigger, and that they had been rejected even more. So Dad decided that we would be the tightest little unit, and we would all choose each other, so they would know they were chosen and loved, despite all the rejection. My dad decided for this to fully work, I should let Eve adopt me. I refused without hearing anything else, and I told him Eve will never adopt me, and I don't care how much of a nice story it paints for her kids, because I am not doing that for them. He told me they are little, and Eve said it would mean so much to them. Dad told me part of being a big sibling is putting the younger kids first. I told them the kids were never going to be my priority, and I would never go out of my way for them like that. Dad offered a compromise then of me, writing and signing a contract saying I would always be their big brother, and I was so lucky to choose 2 awesome siblings, which I said no to as well. Then the adoption stuff was pushed more. Eve tried telling me I would still be able to call her Eve most of the time, but just call her mom in front of her kids. Dad told me I was being selfish for refusing to do this, and reiterated that the kids should be our priority. Am I the a-hole? Being an older sibling absolutely does not mean always putting your younger siblings first. It's okay if OP's dad sees his stepkids as his, but trying to force OP and the other relatives to accept them as their own is ridiculous. Those kids are complete strangers to them, and to OP. The thing that really prevents families blending more than anything else is the parents forcing it. OP may well have gotten attached to the kids eventually, until it was a requirement that OP does. The only people being selfish here are OP's father and Eve. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Comfortable C2454 says, "Not the a-hole, but your dad and Eve are massive ones, trying to force you to be adopted. Their actions lost them more than they could possibly have gained." Coldstream Capel says, "Not the a-hole. What a mess, OP. I'm sorry you've been dragged into this. Just because your dad and Eve want to play happy families and pretend everything is peachy doesn't mean you have to play along. You have a right to say no, and they should respect that." Travina Ice says, "Not the a-hole. Eve shows that her kids' well-being means more to her than yours. Tell them they can't push you, but you are willing to see how family dynamics will establish. But they should not push you, or you would lose interest to connect with him. Maybe also in time his family will come to like them, but he should not try to push." I've been put in a tough position, and I'm not sure if I'm being selfish here. My younger sister-in-law, Emma, is getting married in a few months. She's always been a bit disorganized with money, but she has a good heart. Recently, she and her fiancé hit some financial troubles, mostly due to unexpected medical bills. Because of this, they've had to majorly downsize their wedding plans. This is where I come in. I've been happily married for 5 years, and my wedding dress is admittedly gorgeous. A bespoke piece that I saved up for years to afford. Emma has always gushed over it. Last week, she tearfully asked if she could borrow it for her wedding, saying it would mean the world to her and save her from having to buy a dress she can't afford. Here's my dilemma. The dress is one of my most treasured possessions. When I bought it, I did so with the intention of keeping it for sentimental reasons and possibly passing it down to my future daughter or family. I treat it with great care and have preserved it perfectly. The thought of something happening to it scares me, especially because Emma can sometimes be careless. I told Emma I needed to think about it, and after agonizing over the decision, I told her no. I explained my reservations and offered to help her find a beautiful, affordable alternative. She was devastated and said that I didn't understand her situation. Now other family members are saying I should be more compassionate given her financial bind, which leaves me feeling guilty. On one hand, I feel like I worked hard and saved to afford that dress. It's not just a dress, but a symbol of my own special day and memories. On the other hand, I wonder if I'm being too materialistic and if I should make a sacrifice to help someone I love in a tough situation. I can afford to replace the dress if something happens to it, but it's not about the money. It's about the sentiment attached to the dress itself. So am I the a-hole for not letting Emma borrow my wedding dress, given her financial difficulties? Funny no one else is stepping forward to offer up their wedding dresses, just OP's. It's OP's dress, and she has every right to keep it for sentimental reasons. Plus, who wants to risk having their dress destroyed by a careless borrower? She needs her own dress for her own day, not OP's dress for her day. And now let's hear the community's opinion. OK Different says, other family members should volunteer resources for sister-in-law's dress, or postpone the wedding until they can get their crap together. Obviously not the a-hole. Most Wonder says, not the a-hole, that's your dress. Maybe the whole family can pitch in and get her own wedding dress. Also, I see beautiful wedding dresses at Goodwill and other thrift or consignment shops. She could also rent one, but your dress should not be up for discussion. Thick Hips Tight Lips says, not the a-hole. I find it tacky to borrow someone else's wedding dress. She needs to find one suitable for her situation. Don't let her get her hands on it. She'll probably ruin it at this point because if she can't have it, nobody can. I have 2 sons, James 36 and Nick 25. Nick is newly married. They got married a year ago, while James has been married for 3 years. Every year on my birthday, we go on a 2-day hiking trip because I'm a single mom and we love to hike. After James got married, I did invite his wife, who I love very much. We're very close. But she didn't want to come because she didn't want to disturb the family tradition. I don't like Nick's wife at all. She is much too old for him. She is 40. She is rude to both me and James. She has no manners, especially with hygiene. She doesn't flush or offer to help with dishes or anything. She doesn't work and is freeloading off my son and is overworking him because she doesn't at least take care of the house or meals. And they were dating for 6 months before they got married. And especially after marriage, he seems to have gotten even more quiet and meek. My son Nick has self-esteem issues, and he is not conventionally attractive, so I think that's why he stays with her. I can't force him to therapy to help him. Now, my birthday is in 2 weeks, so I called Nick to discuss the plan. It's 3 days, 2 nights of camping, and on the 3rd day, we come back home. Nick's wife wants to join, and I said absolutely not. It's my birthday, and I don't want anyone I don't like at it. Also, my sons live far away, and it's one of the only times we can bond nowadays. Just some time with my boys, just like when we were younger. Nick's wife said if I'm not coming, he's not coming. Nick said I was being rude to his wife, and I'm disrespecting his relationship. James thinks I should bite my lip and let her come because we are family, but I disagree. Edit. Totally forgot to add this. She wants to change the location because she's overweight and doesn't want to hike, and it should only be a day, and so many other stuff that takes away from the experience and my birthday. Am I the a-hole? The Green Grace 1651 says, no a-holes, except Nick's wife, from the sounds of it. I think you should let her come because it's the only way you'll see him. If you allow her to isolate Nick from you and the family, which it sounds like she could be doing, it will be so much worse for him, up to when and if he finally decides to leave the relationship. You can swallow your annoyance and dislike of her for a few days. It's a short time, but you can make it count. Don't take the bait if she tries to create conflict or is rude to you. Shrug it off. Let her make a jerk of herself if she's going to. And if none of that happens and you just don't like her because she annoys you, or you don't like the age difference, then you would be the a-hole. Comparison Flashy says, not the a-hole. In your edit, you stated you were willing to have her come along, but she wants to change the hike to suit her fitness? Nope. You set the destination for your birthday hike and invite everyone to come along. No harm, no foul if Nick and his wife decide not to go. Please drop the resentment, though. In your original post, it was clear you didn't want her attending at all. Be consistent with both your daughter-in-laws and say that the hike is for mother and sons only. Maybe the daughter-in-laws could plan something together for the same weekend. Then you all meet up for the birthday dinner at the end. Oryx94 says, if half of what you say is true, rejecting Nick because you can't stand his wife risks only leading him to isolate himself even more and be completely at the mercy of his wife. Try to stay close to him, and this time put up with his wife just for the sake of your relationship with your son.